Hey everybody, it's Party Lead, and it's time for us to take a look at all the things we learned last week from the Lords of the Vampire Coast. It's not just the 4 lords we know about now, but also some details about units, quest battles, and more. With no time to waste, let us dive in to the sea of information. First things first, Sahasra Direfin, starting at the same location in both Vortex and Mortal Empire's campaigns, is a brand new character made by the folks at Creative Assembly for this DLC. We've already seen Creative Assembly make things from scratch, but this move of introducing a major character in a leadership role made from scratch means a lot of possibilities have just opened up for the remainder of the series. The fact that CA can make a character in such an important role means that they might also be able to introduce entire factions to the world. That might be the next logical step. Assuming this was a test run, I imagine CA will be looking to do bigger and bigger things, adding entire nations, perhaps from scratch, as I'm suggesting. A promising future for the next entry in the series, but I digress. Sahasra Direfin was the favorite court singer of the Bretonnian king, sent to cross the ocean to sing for the Phoenix King. Caught in a storm, the ship sunk, drowning all those on board. And yet, the Lamprey, her ship, can be seen decades later sailing with rotting wood and tattered sails through waters calm and stormy. Known as the Mistress of the Deep, she increases loyalty of new recruits and reduces upkeep and recruitment costs for Mornghuls and Sirens. These loyal followers also see increased physical resistance and the ability to cause magical damage. I don't know if loyalty is actually being introduced as a mechanic here, or if the term loyal is just being used for flavor. Or perhaps loyal just means restricted for units of higher rank. Either way, if this is carried over to multiplayer, then she will be very potent against armies that bring lots of physically resistant units. Dark Elves, Wood Elves, Savage Orcs, and Skaven beware. Atop a rotting Leviathan, I imagine she'll make a terrifying anti-infantry armor-piercing lord, or perhaps an anti-large armor-piercing lord, though I imagine she would sacrifice her own magical damage output for it, unless her rotting Leviathan is so rotting that it's actually a spirit crab itself, which would be very cool, but I have my doubts. Describing the Leviathan as resplendent suggests to me that it might at least look rather unique and gaudy. Shiny, even. Her Bordelot Flabellum, which is her fan, will likely be obtained through a quest battle. It increases public order across the lands and increases vampiric corruption in the local area. It also unlocks a pretty interesting passive that has her reduce ability cooldown times when she casts a spell. Hopefully there are some pretty solid abilities up her sleeve. I'm hoping they give her at least one fan-related wind spell. How can one miss such a golden opportunity? I imagine her singing will make an appearance as well, maybe something that buffs leadership and another that causes fear or at least drops enemy leadership in a radius. She might actually have access to a variety of songs for different types of buffs and debuffs. Again, I digress. What we do know is that she'll be able to summon Damned Knights Errant, and she'll also be able to upgrade that ability to summoning Damned Questing Knights or Damned Knights of the Realm. Whether all 3 will be available in multiplayer or not is an unknown, but I imagine it's one ability that gets upgraded in the single-player campaigns. These will likely be ethereal variants of the same units, if not undead variants, and if it's the former, they'll lose all their armor and gain physical resistance instead, and if the latter, they might just get added regeneration buffs. I suspect it'll actually be the former, and I also imagine there'll be a very tight cast range and also a limited cast number on these spells and abilities, but still enough to place some great rear charges or to shut down enemy ranged units and kiting skirmishers. She's also able to reduce the cost of raising the dead for her army while increasing recruitment rank, and her abilities also give her higher hero capacity and recruitment ranks for Morngul Haunters. Her Fiery Diva ability reduces cooldown times and overcast costs, while as a passive, she gives extra physical resistance for Sirens, Mornghuls, and Bloated Corpses, including reduced upkeep for Bloated Corpses as well. Finally, her chance for miscasting is reduced, while her Power Reserve sees a buff as well. Fittingly, she seems to be rather magically inclined, and I suspect she'll have access to the lore of the deep, not that we know what that means just yet. As an ethereal lord, she'll likely have very few hit points as well, and that means she'll be quite susceptible to direct damage spells and abilities, finishing her off with ease. Atop her crab, she will likely have much more HP, and in the right matchups, she might not need to worry about the magical damage if an opponent wasn't expecting an ethereal lord on the other side of the field. Aranessa Saltspite, hailing from Sartosa, leading the Sartosa Free Company, is a mutant pirate captain, supposedly the daughter of the sea god Manan. She herself is neither vampire nor undead, but instead she has access to vampire first mates who bring life to the sea-bloated corpses that wash up against her ship's hull. Whether vampire first mates are a type of hero unit or not is yet to be seen, but maybe it's just referring to vampire fleet captains. Starting in Sartosa in both Vortex and Mortal Empire's campaigns, she is from the other Warhammer fantasy game, Dreadfleet. If Dreadfleet is available for use, that gives much more weight to the likelihood of Arabi showing up with the Golden Magus in an upcoming piece of DLC. For more details on that, though, check out the video linked under the eye at the top right corner of the screen, talking about Arabi, how I think it might be implemented, and honestly it seems much more likely after the details of this DLC have been showcased. Now, leading from aboard the Swordfish, her ship, her faction effects include more income from raiding and sacking, and higher chances of finding treasure maps. As a lord, she increases weapon strength and melee attack within her leadership aura. It sounds like this is only for her mortal units though, and not for any undead she might be leading. That's a nice way to suggest she's not really a fan of her undead followers, but merely using them as tools. She has the option of a rotting Promethean as a mount, and I wonder if she'll be atop it alongside some gunners for ranged capabilities, or if it will be her alone. Her quest item, meanwhile, is her unique weapon, Kraken's Bane, giving increases to melee attack and anti-large buffs within an area to all friendly units. This will be an interesting consideration when preparing to go against her in multiplayer. Keep your constructs and cavalry a safe distance away from her and any of the units that she might be supporting with Kraken's Bane. Now, cavalry-heavy builds will likely be reduced to minced meat in minutes depending on cooldowns and just how big that anti-large buff is. I imagine she counts as a halberd unit herself when on foot, making her anti-large and armor-piercing in combat, so likely to be a decent threat on her own too. Chances are when she's atop her rotting Promethean, she will retain this anti-large armor-piercing capability as well, keeping her a pretty scary unit. As a mutant, she is able to regenerate hit points, and she's also immune to fatigue, something that'll make her quite terrifying. Her peg legs increase her armor and weapon strength, and I look forward to seeing them with blood and gore activated. She reduces upkeep costs and increases missile resistance of rotting Leviathans and Prometheans, and she is also able to increase leadership, movement, and replenishment rate of her Sartosa Free Company units. Again, I take that to mean just her mortal units, under my assumption of her having this mixed roster. She's also able to increase ammunition for carronades, mortars, and Queen Bess when in her army, and as one of Sartosa's most formidable pirate captains, her melee attack is boosted, she gets better plunder from encounters at sea, and she gets a ward save, all from the Your Worst Nightmare skill. Count Noctilus, one we saw coming from a mile away, starts on the new landmass of the Galleon's graveyard in both campaign types. Once a von Karstein of Sylvania, he was drawn to the Maelstrom in the ocean and teleported himself and his holdings and minions to it at the Galleon's graveyard. His ship, the Bloody Reaver, was built from the ruins of sunken warships in the area, and now he haunts the seas as pirate captain. Faction effects here are pretty interesting. Missions will come through, asking Noctilus to declare war with a certain faction or another. If he accepts, his own faction sees unique rewards and an increase in recruitment capacities and reduced recruitment duration for Necrofex Colossi. He is also able to reduce the upkeep cost for Necrofex Colossi in his own army, and he sees increased weapon strength for all monstrous units in his army. So if you find yourself up against him in multiplayer, you might want to bring some spears and halberds for the fight. He has the Necrofex Colossus as a mount option that we've already seen in the screenshots, and his quest item is Captain Roth's Moondial, increasing movement and line of sight on the campaign map, while also allowing him to summon zombie deckhands across the battlefield. I suspect these will be quite limited, especially if Noctilus can also use Raise Dead through magic, otherwise he can become quite spammy. Nonetheless, keep your ranged units protected against him. The Captain Roth mentioned here is none other than Jago Roth, captain of the ship Heldenhammer. I doubt it'll be the case, but maybe this means we'll see him be a new unique lord with a unique start position when the Empire gets revisited sometime further down the line. That would be pretty neat, I'm just saying, but chances are that's not going to happen. I don't know if they're planning on adding more lords to Game 1 factions, but they are playing around with start positions as we've already seen with the dwarves. Time will tell. Now back to Noctilus though. As Master of the Dreadfleet, he will increase Lord recruitment rank across the faction, and it seems that Noctilus is quite powerful with regenerative magic. Not only does he have regenerative powers, but his army can see increased replenishment rate and recruitment capacities. As a Vandal, his ship grows at a faster rate, and raiding and sacking sees increased income, while his lineage seems to give him the ability to terrify enemies and also gives him a great deal of replenishment through regeneration, perhaps at a faster rate, perhaps only triggering when below a certain HP threshold, but almost certainly making him susceptible to fire. He also has the ability to use the Curse of the Galleon's Graveyard to increase leadership and melee defense of his Depth Guard, Deck Droppers, and Terrorgeists, while his Invincible Fleet has heightened leadership in Noctilus's army, and it makes Noctilus himself unbreakable. Now that might be a terrifying combination. Regenerative capabilities and the Unbreakable trait bring lots of fire. Luthor Harkin was discussed in my previous video, so let's be a little quicker discussing the Arch Grand Commodore Luthor Harkin and his many personalities. He starts in roughly the same area in both campaign types, though the political boundaries are a little different between the two. He hates lizardmen, which gives him diplomatic penalties, but also boosts him when fighting against them. And his fractured mind with multiple personalities will supposedly have unpredictable consequences. I hope this goes beyond simple clicking or RNG determining buffs and debuffs, and I hope it actually influences the way somebody might want to play when using this faction. His Death Shriek Terrorgeist is his unique mount, taking him to the air, and Slan Gold is something I mistakenly assumed to be a resource in my previous video, but it's actually most likely a quest item that reduces the cost of raising the dead, increases magic resistance, and reduces the Winds of Magic starting amount for enemy armies. I'm not sure if that's his own magic resistance being talked about here, but this does imply that he begins at least a little magically resistant, only to have it buffed by this quest item. No stranger to battle, he boosts the leadership of Depth Guard and Zombie Deckhands, while increasing the hero capacity for Vampire Fleet captains. His severed connection with the Winds of Magic makes him more magically resistant, confirming that he does start at least a little magically resistant, and it also reduces the Winds of Magic available to the enemy armies. His hand cannon either simply causes a great deal of armor-piercing damage, or it might actually have the fire damage output. Maybe it actually causes explosions, and it looks like it buffs missile damage for his zombie gunnery as well. Armor and melee defense can be temporarily buffed through Moment of Lucidity, a hilarious way to tie into the lore, and his skill as a pirate king helps reduce upkeep costs for units in his own army while increasing global recruitment capacity as well. Finally, his Fractured Mind seems to give him a leadership buff while also giving him Frenzy temporarily. I think this is an active ability. I wonder if this triggers as an active skill though, or if it's actually just a passive that is only activated under certain circumstances, such as going below a certain HP threshold, or when leadership is above 50%, something like that. Outside of the Lords, a few things have been confirmed as well. Sirens, Bloated Corpses, Morghuls are physically resistant. We assume that about Sirens, but good to know that about Bloated Corpses and Morghuls as well. Rotting Prometheans and Leviathans are also resistant to missile damage, and it seems that Carronades and Mortars have been confirmed. And we've confirmed the existence of Morghuls Haunters and Vampire Fleet Captains as hero types. The former is probably terrifying and frightening, with chill auras, regeneration, no mount option, and assassin-type mission options on the campaign map. Just a wild guess. The latter likely has ranged capabilities, and I imagine has a bit of a support role, bringing stat buffs through abilities. Think like the Engineer. We're also almost certainly getting Caster Lords as well, though I don't know if or what they'll be, if they'll have unique names, or if they'll have different stylings, or if they'll just be, Banshees and Necromancers. I mean, chances are we might actually get a Necromancer as well, perhaps with Corpse Carts as an option here, and I wonder if we'll also get more ethereal hero options. Much like Clan Angrund got the Ancestors for the Dwarves, it might make sense for at least Direfin to come in with some of her own. Surely such a famed and valued operatic singer had a retinue. In my opinion, we've got a great set of lords here, spread out across the map. Some great additions, both in terms of personality and playstyle, and also in terms of the flexibility that Games Workshop has with Creative Assembly, or vice versa, I suppose. We're seeing Dreadfleet references being made, and we're seeing things made from scratch purely for this series. This has been a very promising set of information dumps over the last week, and I'm curious to see what we learn this week. I imagine we'll get a full roster reveal this week, with TwitchCon happening the week after, being when we probably see things in action. Right now, I'm tempted to play Aranessa Saltspite for my own Let's Play. She seems like the most badass of the lot, and even though I really want to see Luthor Harkin in action, the possibility of having a mixed faction is quite intriguing. Let me know what you guys think and what you might want to see on the channel. I might throw up an official vote on my Patreon as well for patrons of the channel. Now, who are you thinking of playing as first and why? Anybody that you're not interested in at all? And how do you feel about CA making a random new legendary lord in this universe? Let me know in the comments down below. Personally, I'm pretty fascinated by it. I like the writing. It's by a former writer for Games Workshop, so, you know, there's the pedigree there, if you will. So I am very happy and excited to see it, and I'm curious to see what else they come up with down the line. The character herself sounds very interesting, to be perfectly honest, and it's cool that they can use this option to fill holes in factions without, you know, crossing any lines, as it were. As always, a massive thanks to you for watching, and a reminder to subscribe for more Total War and strategy gaming content, including Let's Plays, previews, reviews, and more. A big thanks to all of my patrons for supporting the channel on a month-to-month basis, and again, thank you for watching. Till next time, cheers.